Hey everyone, this is Aniket with another episode of The Power of Storytelling. Today we have Vyasar Ganesan with us. Hey Vyasar, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So Vyasar is a writer and a college counselor at the Liberal Arts and Science Academy in Austin, Texas. And Vyasar, I think a great place to start would just be to hear a little bit about your childhood, your family, and what growing up was like for you and how you think it shaped who you are today.
Yeah, so growing up, I was pretty much raised here in Austin. I was born in New Hampshire, but we moved to Austin pretty much as soon as I was born. And if you saw the show, you know that I was raised by a single mom here in Austin, and my family moved here pretty quickly after that. My grandparents came down to help take care of me. My aunt and uncle and my cousins came down to sort of help build our family and community here. Growing up, mom was doing everything in her power to keep us fed, to pay the mortgage, pay the bills and everything. So she was working part-time jobs, selling phone cards to gas stations. It was crazy because she couldn't afford a babysitter. So what she would do, she'd take me on these trips and then, leave me at the gas station. Like some kids joke about being left at the gas station on road trips. That was my babysitter, were those gas station attendants. They'd give me a roll of quarters, set me up on the metal slug machine, and I'd just play that for a few hours until mom came back with another shipment of phone cards and we'd go home. And so I spent a lot of days on the road with her in the car, or just, when she was fed up with me in the gas stations. It was interesting growing up, when you have a single parent and when you're in a low income household, because, rice and beans for like a daily lunch and dinner is pretty common for Indian people, right? Lentils, dal, all that stuff, and rice. It's like a pretty standard diet. So I didn't think about it too much until we had family over, because we always had family visiting before, family settled in Austin permanently. And whenever they came, the diet changed radically. Instead of rice and beans, this is paneer makhani, this is garlic naan, this is raita. These are things that are not horribly lavish, but just a completely different side of the Indian cuisine life for me growing up. And I got really curious about those changes and understanding this is what it means to kind of begin to understand your socioeconomic status from a super young age. Growing up, mom wanted to make sure that I always had the best, even if we couldn't afford it always. So she got me enrolled in a magnet school called Fulmore. It's changed its name now, but it was a liberal arts magnet school focused on law and ethics and art. And I fell in love. I was in sixth grade. I was like, this is exactly where I want to be for the next 3 years. Once mom realized, of course, that there's different kinds of magnet schools, one being liberal arts, one being math and science, she's like, you're going to the math and science one. But I was like, but mother, I want to be an artist, just like you, because my mom's degree is in art. My mom's got a teaching certification in art. And she said, no, you're going to go to the math and science program. So I went to the math and science program. I had a great time there. I made friends there. And then I went to LASA, the school where I work at now. It's actually the same high school I graduated from. And so I went there. I joined the robotics team. I was on the wrestling team. I was on the Dungeons and Dragons club. I was part of all that. But I always knew in the back of my mind, I wanted to get back to the liberal arts. So I stuck it to her with the college app side. I got to college, and I picked Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania, this tiny little liberal arts school in the middle of nowhere that had one of the most renowned Shakespeare scholars at the time teaching there. I was like, boom, got it. And yeah, that's the broad strokes. If you have more specific stuff, I can definitely dive in, but that's the broad strokes of my life as a kid.
Yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit about one of the things you told me about earlier that really stuck with me. You mentioned Little Caesars Customer Appreciation Day pizza.
Oh yes.
And that's such a specific, vivid memory. So I just want to be taken into that, and what something like that meant for you, and even today, all these years later.
So let's start with pizza, because pizza is the real birth of the genesis of this story. Pizza is a really important food for my family, not because it's something we worship or cherish or know a lot about, but because when we're sick and tired of the same old and we want to make a change, pizza is usually the quickest, easiest thing that we jump for. And it's also a thing that everyone in my family has really strong opinions about. I have family in New Jersey. I have family in Philly. I have family in Arizona. We have all very, very different ideas of what constitutes a good pizza. So from a very young age, not having a lot of money and wanting pizza all the time, and my mom wanted pizza all the time, we're like, okay, how can we get the most amount of pizza to stretch out over a period of time and pay the least amount of money for it? Enter Little Caesars. Customer Appreciation Day, once a month, usually on the 15th or 16th. Little Caesar says if you buy at least 20 pizzas, you get them at a crazy deal, like $1 per pizza or something. So mom would go in and she would buy 20 pizzas, and we would stock the fridge full of pizzas, just fridge full of pizzas, freezer full of pizzas, pepperoni, split like cheese. This is before we were vegetarian. And we would live off of that. And you would think 20 pizzas, that's a lot of pizza. Like you can live off that for a while, but it's just me and my mom. And we both like pizza a lot. And it was usually gone a lot faster than either of us knew what we were doing. Like it was just really easy. Now, of course, like I still have fondness and appreciation for Little Caesars, but I also, you know, am gainfully employed and I have a mortgage. So I can spring for the better stuff if I need it. No disrespect, Little Caesars, you know, much love. You kept me fed throughout my childhood, but you know what you are.
And I also wanted to touch on, you talked about how you went to and teach at the Liberal Arts and Science Academy. And I think that that's so interesting, like bridging both the humanities and the sciences together. And I think that that's something that like I've struggled with, bridging the gap. So I wanted to hear a little bit about how like your experience there bridges that gap, and also just how you found that connection throughout your life.
You know, it's so funny because for so long I struggled with that gap the same way you did, Aniket. It was just, I was really good at writing and really terrible at everything else. I loved physics, but I was never good at it. If you looked at my college transcript, you'd see all these physics classes my first 2 years and not a single grade above a B-. Most of them were actually in the C range, but I loved it so much because physics is this wonderful thing of presenting you a model of how the world works, presenting you a really delicate balance between the math and the physical description of how things work. Especially when you get into astrophysics, because you get into like celestial rotation and you get the macro scale of galaxies spinning and stars colliding, and you get a really intense appreciation for how it all works. The English side, the liberal arts side, is the more metaphysical side of why everything works, why we work. And so my understanding has always been that where science seeks to describe the world, liberal arts seeks to describe the people who live in that world. And there's an inherent connection between the two because, we live in the same world, we occupy the same space, and how we live has a huge impact on how the world operates. It doesn't obviously alter the fundamental physical rules that, make up our universe, but it definitely has an impact. You don't need to look at climate change to see it. You can look at oil spills, you can look at deforestation, you can look at space exploration and just the amount of space junk that's been floating around the planet for so long. It's little things like that. One of the best things I like about the school that I work at, LASA, is your first year that you're there, you have 4 required classes you take. You've got, first 2 years. You've got a science and technology class, a digital design, which is basically like an intro to graphic design class, a version of a philosophy class called Great Ideas, and an environmental science class. Those are your 4 required courses on top of your English, your math, your science, your social studies, all that stuff. You have to take all of that together. The idea is that from day one, exactly, you're getting a really well-rounded grasp on how everything works. And you get to think about, okay, by the time I'm a senior, what are the classes I really enjoyed? How can I turn that into a major? How can I turn that into my college search? And it's a real pleasure working with students and getting them to reflect on, oh, I really enjoyed this, but I didn't really like this, and getting to tease out where their interests lie.
Yeah, so you talked about how you took physics coursework and also English coursework during college. And I think that a lot of kids in high school and middle school struggle with trying to figure out what they want to major in when going into college. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what your thought process was like entering college, and how, just that life transition, how you chose where you wanted to go?
So, in terms of where I wanted to go for college, or in terms of where I wanted to go?
In terms of path.
Yeah. Well, I knew English was always going to be a part of what I wanted to do no matter what, because I love writing, I love reading. I used to, going back to the pizza stories, Pizza Hut did this thing where if you read 30 books a month, you get a free personal pan pizza. And so I would read 60 bucks a month and get 2 personal pan pizzas and think that I was gaming the system. Because I was like, I love reading, this is going to be easy, boom. But I knew that it was always going to be a big part of my life. And the physics, I wanted to pursue physics as well because at the time I was really passionate about it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be an English major, physics major, double major. I didn't realize that you don't get 2 degrees for double majoring. Not always, depends on where you go. But at the time, I was not going to get 2 degrees. I was like, okay, well, looks like I'm going to have to choose one because I don't want to pay that much money and not get 2 degrees. So I chose English and had physics be my minor, and then I did a deeper concentration in astrophysics from there because that's what I, was really invested in. But for me, it was never about path. I was a very bad path planner and being career-minded in college. My whole thing was, I'm going to be a professor one day. Because back in 2008, when the economy was still looked different, and the job market looked very different, especially in academics and academia. Being a professor was a fairly reasonable goal at the time. But by the time, I got to my senior year of college, and I had grown a little bit, I was seeing, you can't just be a professor with a bachelor's degree. You kind of need a plan otherwise. And of course, I didn't have a plan. So what do you do when you don't have a plan? You apply to grad school, which is what I did. And I got really lucky. I got into Columbia's program, their MFA program, which, it was incredibly, I felt so honored to get that phone call. But I also recognized, okay, well, if this is what I got to do, I got to make it work, because Columbia doesn't give anybody money. They are in the bottom 5% for funding students. And I got to find a way to grow professionally while I also grow in school. So while I was there, I worked the whole time I was in grad school. I had 5 part-time jobs, and I made sure that each one of them was geared towards an interest that I wanted. I loved theater, so I got a job at Miller Theater. I was part of house management. I was a house manager. I was an usher. I got a job for the Food Network, where I helped do culinary editing for about a year. I worked at the Mailman School of Public Health, because I was really always interested in health policy and lack of public health care. And public health, they did a lot of talking about that in global health initiatives, so I was doing stuff there. And I found all these different ways that I could grow within higher education as well. But again, still not having a career path, because frankly, I didn't make the time to take advantage of the resources I had. Both at Allegheny College and at Columbia University, there was an extensive career services department. And I never met with them. I maybe met with them once in the 6 years that I was there, because I just decided I was too busy. I decided that I was going to be spending all my time reading, which is true. On average, when I was at Columbia, I was reading 3 to 4 books a week, writing 80 pages a week. But that was also what I loved to do. And, I chose that over everything else. And I got 2 years to do it. It's one of the happiest memories of my life, is just spending those 2 years doing those things. Now, seeing where I am, I recognize that the best part about your education is not that you use it every day, but that it informs your sense of who you are every day. Whether you are an engineering student, an English student, a poetry student, whatever, your knowledge improves who you are, it improves your sense of self. You are a better person for knowing what you know. And just being able to say that means you use your degree every day. And it informs sort of your path and where you're going to go from now. I feel lucky to have the job that I have. I feel really grateful, because it is a big part of it is my dream job. I always wanted to work with students, and the fact that I get to work with students who are smart, who are motivated, who know what they want or are trying to find out what they want, it's great. But getting them to college is not the hard part. The hard part is trying to convince them not to apply to 5 Ivy League schools, because let's be real, you ain't getting into all 5. The hard part is convincing them not to apply to 20 schools, because you got to pick one. Yeah. And your parents don't want to pay $50 per college application. Actually, it's not even 50 anymore. It's like 75 now for some of them. But I think the biggest advice I can give kids who are trying to find their path, or trying to figure out what their major should be, especially for the people in middle school, don't worry about it right now. Everyone thinks you should be worrying about it. Don't worry about it. Just focus on what you like doing, whether it's video games, building bridges out of toothpicks, writing, reading, making movies with your friends. Focus on what you enjoy doing, because the best part about life is getting to do that. And if you can find a career that also helps you do what you enjoy, well, that's just great. So just focus on what you enjoy. For high school kids who are getting there, again, reflect on why you enjoyed that. Reflect on the things that made you happy and why they made you happy. It's not enough that you had a great time volunteering for NHS. Literally every Indian kid in America is going to be a part of NHS, right? Just think about the best parts of that. Think about the parts that are most satisfying and happy for you. Because colleges, they're not going to be impressed by the things that you think will impress them. They're going to be impressed by who you are and your ability to portray who you are.
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice, especially I think I resonate with the whole trying to derive meaning out of your education, out of the things that you're involved in, things like that. And there was something that you wrote on your website that I thought was great. You said, there are countless Vyasar stories about countless other topics. No matter what you're looking for, Vyasar has it. And I truly think you do. And I think going off of that, you've had experiences in so many different things. You said you've been an ice cream scooper, to a carpenter, to an editor, an actor, a teacher, all of these things. So I guess what would you say are some of the lessons that you've been able to derive from these things that have helped you have meaning in these things that you do?
I think that the biggest thing is learning to love every single job you have, but also learning why not every job is the right fit. when a lot of people, when I was in college, were looking at internships, that's when I was being an ice cream scooper or a summer camp counselor. And I remember thinking like, well, I'm getting paid to do these things. They're not getting paid to be an intern, because my time is valuable. And it's something that, like, it's a lesson that was hard fought and hard learned. And I definitely fought with my mom a lot about it. But I have only ever had one unpaid internship in my life. It was pretty good. It was a writing internship. I was helping a woman self-publish. And it was really eye-opening into the world of what it means to be a professional writer. But I also knew as soon as it was done, this is going to be the only unpaid internship I ever had. And that's what I would tell people too, is just like, recognize that your time has value. Recognize that what you have to offer has value. And if an employer is willing to see that, then they better be willing to pay for it. That's what it comes down to. They have a lot more money than you think they do, and they have a lot more money than they know what to do with. And if they can't afford to throw you $12 an hour, if you're not getting benefits, to run around like a monkey and be at their beck and call, and they're not, and like to glean whatever grains of wisdom you can from the experience, that it's not worth it. You gotta find the times that are worth it. And if it's gonna be an unpaid internship, they better have a damn good reason for why it's not paid, and they better be able to back it up and justify it to you. Some of my fondest job experiences weren't internships. They were being a carpenter, because I was building fences with my friends. It was me and a bunch of high school friends working together at this company, and we set our own hours and we work outside all day and we eat pizza afterwards, and we just have a great time working outside and working with their hands. It helps you build a lot of reflection. I think a lot of people, who want to go into highly technical fields like engineering or computer science or things like that, they tend to look down on people who work with their hands, which is so counterintuitive, right? Because so much of what you do has practical application, and so much of what you need to be thinking about are the people who are going to be physically building the devices you're working on. Design is only half the battle, And even then, not everything you make is going to make it out of design, because somebody on the other end has said, yeah, well, we can't make this. This is a cool concept, but no one can actually make this. So you have to be able to know both sides. You have to be able to understand the people who work with their hands, understand that, they have a lot to offer in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine. I think also too, there's been a lot of talk recently about entrepreneurship, about being a leader, about, this sense of individualism and forward thinking, and being a startup guy, or being the next, brown woman leader in this field, which is amazing. Like, it's really inspiring to see kids stepping up and see everybody trying to be a leader and starting their own nonprofits and everything. But the fact of the way the world works is that not everybody can be a leader. There are going to be some people who are going to have to work 9 to 5s. There are going to be some people who are going to be who are going to just be working at that startup. You can't start a startup and not have people working for you. You can't have an organization that's just comprised of leaders. Some people are going to be followers, and that's okay. I am one of those people. I am not a good leader at a lot of things. There are a few things I can do, okay, but I am a great follower. I am a great supporter. If we're thinking about this in video game terms, I am the support character all the way. I'm the hard carry. And I think that's okay. I think people have to start recognizing that that's okay. And that's a good thing, that if you recognize that that's not going to be you, don't feel bad about that. Embrace it and find ways to support people. Colleges aren't going to look at your resume. Employers aren't going to look at your resume like, but what have you started? But what have you, made for yourself and achieved? You can share those achievements. It doesn't all have to be on one person's shoulders. You can try to find a path to success with other people at the helm. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of people who live their everyday lives and are perfectly happy not being a CEO.
I think that's really important. I think that something that's difficult is being able to hone in on how to become that best support character that you can be. What kind of things would you recommend, or what have you seen, and what makes a good support character, and how can we become a better support character?
Part of it is clear communication, just being really open and honest with what you want. That's just the key for everything in life, really. But the other side of it is also surrounding yourself with the right people. There are going to be a lot of people who want to take advantage of your time. There are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to just use you until you're dried up. There are going to be a lot of people out there who also want you to grow. I think keeping an eye out for the people who are invested in your growth at the same time as their own corporate growth or their success growth. I had an interview once with a game design company. I didn't end up getting the job, but he said something that stuck with me. He said that It doesn't matter whether you get this job or not, or whether you stick with us for 5 minutes or 5 years. At the end of your job, you should feel that you have grown more than when you started. And that's how I look at everything now. You know, every job, every internship, every opportunity, there should be an opportunity for growth of some kind. You should learn and grow and develop into something else. And if you feel that the person who is heading up whatever you want to get involved in is not invested in your growth, then it's not the place that you should consider wanting to be.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess one other question that I was curious about is, like, I think one common theme throughout a lot of your experiences is a love for teaching. And you talked about that as well. You taught at summer camps, at temples, in schools. And I think that the coolest part about being a teacher is that it's a two-way street, and you get to learn a lot from your students as well. So I was interested in what kind of things you think that you learned from your students that has affected your life in a positive way.
This is bringing up some really funny memories, because I remember when I was at Columbia, I taught in something called the summer high school program, and it brings in kids from all over the world, rich kids, poor kids, local kids from the city, kids from Azerbaijan, everywhere. And there was a good group of kids from Texas one year, I remember, and I was teaching a creative writing class. And so, like, you have to just like frame it properly, because these are kids who have paid to come to Columbia and live in New York for a summer, and they're choosing to take a creative writing class with you. So there's like a level of like, okay, these are going to be some weird high school kids that you're dealing with. And I remember just the whole time I'm teaching them, you know, just the ins and outs of poetry, the ins and outs of essay writing and fiction and everything. I am learning so much about where they're from. Kids are excellent observers, and they have a lot to share about what they love, whether it's, you know, Poughkeepsie and the life on the bay, or whether it's Montenegro and the beautiful buildings and architecture there. Like, these kids from all over the world with a huge array of experiences. And it kind of, going forward, has always informed me that we teach children thinking that, you know, we've seen it all, but kids have seen, like, the giant breadth of children that teachers teach over the span of their lives has seen a hell of a lot more, and knows and is still reeling and dealing with all of these things. It's one of the most incredible parts about being a teacher, is that you never stop running into those people. You never stop interacting with them and learning from their experiences and growing with them. And some of the things that they are interested in too. I had a kid once who told me, I want to go into forensic nursing. And my first instinct was to say, why do they need nursing? They're already dead. I was then swiftly corrected, because forensic nursing does not happen. You don't nurse the victims in the CSI lab. You're doing a lot of work with victims from arson and collecting evidence off of them. You're working a lot with trauma victims and like helping them through their process and open up to the investigators and stuff. And it was a really cool field to learn about that has a huge need for students. It's one of the biggest fields of nursing that is empty right now, which is hard to think about, nursing being an empty field at all. But it was something I learned from a student. It's not something I had to look up. It's something that I learned from the student, and they were able to tell me all about it. And because of that, I was able to help guide them to what they needed. It's the most incredible thing. Like, there's no guarantee what you're going to learn from them. The only guarantee is that you're just going to keep learning.
Yeah. And one last question that I wanted to ask is, you talked about how you kind of found your passion like in 6th grade when you first started taking your liberal arts classes. But I know that not everyone has that experience in like immediately knowing what they want to do. And as a teacher, as a counselor, how do you help your students with that process of identifying some passion or meaning, however they might define that, because not everyone defines it the same way, but just that process of going after it? What advice would you have?
I think the word that I always try to use with students is purpose, because purpose is bigger than your major. It's bigger than your career. Purpose is why you are here, why you exist. For some people, purpose is tied to a religion or an identity that way. For some people, purpose is really tied to a project they want to work on or meaningful work that they have. But I try to encourage them to think bigger, think beyond the reason for their existence, which is hard. There's adults who don't even know what their purpose statement is. I still battle with my sense of purpose all the time. But it's important to start asking the question, even if you don't have an answer for it, because it starts getting you thinking about, how does my purpose inform my major? How does my purpose inform what I want to study? How does my purpose inform the job I want to have? How does my purpose inform the colleges I want to connect to? Because the more things you can align with your purpose, the easier your life will be, the happier your life will be, and the more your purpose will be fulfilled. And that's always a good feeling at the end of the day. it's just really important to be able to diagnose that and have those conversations. And again, not everyone's going to be ready for that. Not everyone's going to be capable of answering to that, but just keep trying, whether that means journaling, whether that means talking with your parents or your friends, whether that means just meditating. You got to start somewhere.
Definitely. Well, Vyasar, thank you so much again for speaking with me today. I definitely learned a lot and I had a great time. Hope you did too.
Yeah, no, this was fun, man. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.